Conscious Awakenings with your host, Hendrix. Discuss and explore global, on-the-fringe, breakthrough human technologies, broadcasting coast to coast, across the nation, and around the world, bridging conscious connections with hard science. Live from California, here's your host, Hendrix.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are and whenever you are. It's a fantastic day here at Conscious Awakenings, and I'm your host, Hendrix, live in everyday sunny California. Today we have a special guest, investigative journalist Bryan to discuss a world awakening. Thank you. To discuss a world awakening. Bryan will share his encounters of a global awakening and tell us what evidence there is that a mass consciousness awakening is occurring. Bryan is an investigative journalist with a BS in marketing and a minor in organic chemistry. He created with news a website called www.outlivesheep.com. He also has a talk show radio, Outlivesheep Radio, and a YouTube channel where he produces movies about the truth of events happening in our world. Bryan's goal is to help people connect the dots about the state of the world. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Hendrix.
Well, how did you come up with Outlivesheep? What does that mean?
Well, the way that Outlivesheep came about is Outlivesheep, of course, is my website. There's different types of people. There's people that are awake and people that aren't awake. And I look at those people, and I'm sure you heard the word that those people, or that term that people are just sheep. And I liked it in the sense that it started out as a survival site because of what I see happening to our world and how it's headed and what direction it's headed. That I came up with Outlive Sheep because I wanted to outlive the sheep and help other people awaken to what was happening around them. And the way this all started, I'll go into that right now, is back in 2008 when the economy collapsed and there was the if you remember, the bailouts and so on and so forth. I'm in the sales, the construction sales, and the market basically froze. I'm in the state of Arizona here, and it froze, and the money going into these big projects basically stopped overnight. Well, going along, many years, just doing a great job of work, making a great income, doing the normal things that we do, and listening to the nightly news and being a conservative Republican for many years, and just doing what I was told in a way. When the economy basically collapsed in 2008, 2009, I started to ask questions, and those questions basically evolved around, why did this happen to me, and who is responsible for it? And I started to look at many current events and past events that were happening and just started to ask why. And it all boiled down to how we were controlled as a society and told what to do and how to think. And from that point in time, I started to open my eyes and awaken to the powers that be in the people around us. And it came up with this idea of outlivesheep.com, where I would basically, it never had to do with making much money. It had to do with being able to inform people of future events and things that would happen and how we could prepare for them by looking at current events. And that's kind of the history of Outlive Sheep in a nutshell.
And how would you define something like awakening? Like, what does awakening mean to you?
Awakening to me, it's not just like, I guess you could look at it as you're sleeping and you wake up. But awakening to me is understanding the control grid of your life. And we think and feel that we're free and we can go get a cup of coffee and we can do as we want. But when you awaken, you understand the driving force behind everything, behind the economy, behind the events happening in our world, on maybe that we can say conspiracies or not. If they pop up more often, you often say maybe they aren't really a conspiracy anymore. Maybe they're actual fact. And once you can awaken out of that sleep or out of the ordinary of turning off the television and doing your investigative journalism on yourself to what you think your reality really is. that was what it means to me.
And how do you discern between conspiracy and fact?
The way that I mean, when people bring up a point of if it's conspiracy, I would say that let's question it. Let's go through the wrongs, because too often people will make fun of you, so you got a tin hat on, you're crazy, and they put you in that category of conspiracy theorist. However, if you truly do the investigative journalism, or just looking to see what the facts are and connecting the dots between what's happening, you start to say, it's not a theory anymore. This is actual fact. And it's just about connecting the dots. I mean, it's not going to come out right in your face and say, hey, yeah, this is exactly how it happened. But from my analysis is that many of the conspiracies are actually true and contrived, unfortunately, by the powers that be.
We'll tell you what, on your website, you talk about the Gulf Coast, so perhaps you can walk us through the process of connecting the dots, if you will, with respect to that subject.
Absolutely. Now, we all know that as of last Thursday, it was either Wednesday or Thursday, they put the cap on the BP oil spill riser there. But, many people have many ideas, and it's still a current event in our lives. But I think we have to look at how this all transpired and how this all happened. And the way that I connected the dots, and if you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see many movies about the Gulf oil spill, and I felt it was a very pressing issue upon in our lives. And the way that I connected the dots was this. If the CEO of BP basically 3 weeks prior to this happening sells 2/3 of his shares, Goldman Sachs sells basically 2/3 or almost all their shares of the BP stock as well. Many of the top banks sold their shares of the BP stock. Halliburton bought the oil response company, Boots and Coots, about 2 to 3 weeks in advance. Then almost the day of, or 2 days prior, Goldman Sachs started shorting the BP stock, saying it was going to go down. Then you look at the events of these unknown contractors that show up on the rig basically hours before this happening. Unknown, no one knows who they are or where they came from. And then you start to look at information came out today that a ex-BP contractor said that they were putting basically this material substance into the riser or the pipe all the way down, and it's normal to run the mud out of the drill head, but they ran an unknown substance that no one ever knew about what it was, and that just came out today. It's in the Washington Post. And you start to look at all these events, and you don't want to think that it's a conspiracy. You don't want to think that anything like this was planned, and I hope to God it wasn't. But if you look at all these events and you look at the oil dispersant that's being used, Correxic 9500 made by Nalco, and you look at who's on the board, well, you've got Al Gore, you've got George Soros, you have many top people who, it just is like, if you understand the oil dispersant, all the workers, or most of the workers that were a part of the Exxon Valdez oil spill back in 1989, most of those guys are dead. And they were all using this Correxic 9500, and I think it was 9587, which was another type of it. And you connect the dots together, and you can say, oh, it's just a conspiracy theory. And it very well could be. But when there's so many more facts coming out, and the problem is that many people don't want to look at the facts. They just want to accept what they're told. Just for example, a nightly news report at the beginning of the oil spill crisis down in Louisiana, it was Channel 5 News, I forget the city, they basically interviewed the Nalco company about the Correxic dispersant, and they basically said it is less toxic than a chocolate cake or a candy bar. It's less toxic than a dish soap. When you look at this substance being applied in a test tube form, it's a vial or something of that sort, and they drop it